live. So see those little lines? For those of you who are not here yet, I'm educating my husband on how to go live, and he hasn't done that before. All right,
everybody. Episode 6.
Episode 6. We don't have anybody on yet, so I guess we should probably like wait a little bit and let some people come on. Don't you think?
Where are you at?
Okay. I'm at the hockey rink. It looks like I'm in a prison. Does it look like prison, kind of?
You do look like you're at a hospital.
Oh, yeah. Well, I like where you guys are. Look at that. Are you in the backyard?
Yeah. Very nice.
We are.
A little hot.
Wow. It's very, I never thought New Jersey was hot, but yes.
Yeah. We're in the woods. Give you guys.
Well, okay. I think we have some people on, so I guess we could start a little bit of our beginning talk.
Yeah.
See the 7th.
Okay.
So hi everybody, it's Helen, obviously there's Helen, and I'm Tobi, and this is my husband Clay. He's our special guest speaker today. What are we doing today, Helen? What are we talking about?
So today we are talking about the partner survival guide for breastfeeding. So that's going to be, we're going to get Clay's perspective.
Yes, episode 6 is going to be really interesting because we, as moms, we talk about a lot of things. And this time we're going to get kind of the dad's, as my husband falls over, we're going to get the dad's perspective, which I think might be different than...
Probably so. Yeah, I would say it was probably different.
Than the moms.
Steve.
Hi, Christy. All right, so Helen, you were going to ask some questions to Clay. I think we're having a
whole list.
There you go.
I have a whole list of questions to talk to a dad, just kind of laying it out and the truth about what it's like to the breastfeeding support.
Hey, Helen, we're having a really big delay on your side, so we weren't able to hear the question.
Okay. Well, I want to know about breastfeeding before Ashlyn's born. Was Clay prepared? What kind of conversations did you guys have?
I'd say we were prepared by the time she was born. We had some breastfeeding. We, of course, researched like crazy. So we knew the benefits of breastfeeding, which really played into our decision. I didn't have a whole lot of say into it because I was I had some input. We started looking at the health benefits, but then we started also looking at cost. Cost was I think cost was more for me and health benefits were more for her. They both played in pretty well, but we started looking at buying everything and formula and some of the issues with the formula, and gastrointestinal.
Right.
We definitely had the decision before she was born to breastfeed.
And we went to a couple classes. We went to Babies R Us and did some lactation classes that were there. And I thought that was really helpful. I think in the beginning, kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, honey, whatever you want to do is fine. But when we went to the classes, I think it got him a little bit more encouraged about it.
Yeah, we're pretty much people that research a lot anyway. So doing the classes and getting online and just talking to people that had done it and people who hadn't sort of swayed our opinion.
And for those of you who probably don't know, my husband is also a firefighter. So he is definitely in the medical field. So it was a little easier, I think, when you start talking about health benefits. He kind of perks his ears up and listens and understands. But as far as the dynamic of breastfeeding, you kind of didn't care how that was done, right?
No, that didn't bother me. I didn't figure I was participating in it, so I didn't really.
What? You're not participating in the actual
nope
breastfeeding?
Not as much as.
she just kind of did whatever I suggested. And he was very supportive, I guess, from a standpoint of he had really no idea what that entailed, because your mom didn't breastfeed you?
I don't remember if I did.
He doesn't remember it.
I don't remember if I did.
So I don't know if he came from a breastfeeding strong family to know, know that. He just was like, oh, okay, Tobi. Sure, sounds good.
Sounds good.
It wasn't a big deal for him. I would have expected lots of conversation, but he was just like kind of one of those one-line. Hey.
I thought it was the best answer. Anytime I was, okay, you got it. Whatever you want, dear. Usually works out best for me.
So great to hear your perspective on it. And for some reason, we're still having, I don't know why. This.
Could be a lot of people on their phones surfing on that internet there, maybe.
I don't know. It's not really any.
Maybe I can get off.
Okay. So if hear me, I'm going to ask a couple more questions. So when and you were kind of the man, not in charge, forward to that, or were you feeling really?
You're gonna probably type your questions. I think you were saying something about the fact that I, as a firefighter paramedic, I work 24-hour shifts. So that means that I was going to be with our daughter for a really long time. And I think you were going to ask, was that something that you were worried about, nervous about, this 24-hour period that you were going to do that?
Yes, I would be looking forward to one-on-one time with Ashlyn. That was a little terrifying, actually, because she would go to work at 6 in the morning and not come home until the following day at like 10 in the morning. So I had multiple hours with Ashlyn every third day. She works every third day. So it was, I sort of looked forward to it, but I wasn't a real big infant person. So I didn't really, that wasn't my favorite stage. I liked it once they got a little older. But, when she went to work, it was sort of a question of how I was going to manage throughout the 24 to 28 hours during the day. Feeding, looking after, trying to get naps in and sleeping and everything else. I was pretty much on my own. So he was like the lone wolf. It was terrifying for a while. Yes.
He never told me that it was terrifying. So this is the first I've heard that you were a little bit nervous.
That's why I never left the house.
Yeah, he did never leave the house. Never left the house. I know I gave him lots of instructions. I think I wrote them out. I gave him a schedule. I gave him
yes, down to the hour schedule. Feed here, diaper here, don't go here, stay here. Yes, she had it all laid out. Whether I followed that, but she did have me a schedule. Yes.
So you're saying you didn't follow the schedule?
I may have deviated a touch, yes. I may have not exactly followed your schedule. Sorry.
And moms, I think this actually happens a lot more than we think, where, we have this plan and, we've kind of gotten into our own little rhythm about breastfeeding before we go back. I think more so when you're going back to work, or if you're going to go out of town for a few days for some event and you're kind of leaving dad to handle it all.
Oh, what? To handle it all. Yes, that's a key word. Leaving dad to handle it.
That
Dad can handle it. You don't need instructions every minute.
That you feel like you probably should do all these things. And I guess, maybe dads don't need as much hand-holding as we think they do. Is that what you think?
I think so. I think we're grown adults. We can handle some things.
Well, did you do it right? That's what we want to know.
She's sitting right in there, as right as I did it.
She is. I don't know if I agree.
Oh well.
But I know making. So she wanted to know, how did you manage feeding Ashlyn the bottles? Because we had that's a lot of bottles that you had to do when I was gone.
Yeah. We did manage. It was difficult at first because she didn't want to take a bottle initially. She only liked certain nipples, so we sort of went through a rough patch with trying to find the right bottle and nipple because she was used to the breast. So she didn't. It's sort of stressful because she ended up. We went through probably a half dozen or a dozen different nipples and bottle combinations, and then the whole stress of her pumping and storing, and then me not wasting, which I found out is a pretty big deal. So, yes, wasting is a big deal. But she did not take the first bottle easy, so it took us quite a while. And she went through a couple stages of colic because of other bottles, I think, and it was an issue. It was definitely an issue for a while.
I think it was a lot harder for you because I was just able to give her my breast. I wasn't around for this big challenge that you had.
Yeah, I was stuck. When she left, I couldn't exactly hand her back. I was on my own for a while. So she either ate or she didn't. She always ate. I would switch out bottles if I needed to. But once we found the right one, she latched on. It was fantastic. It was good after that.
So we used, in the beginning, we did use nurser bags. Not very long, though.
No, I got sort of talked to about the nurser bags pretty quickly because I would thaw out a full nurser bag and then, leave it in the refrigerator. And I found out I couldn't quite do that as much as I wanted to.
I'm pretty sure I gave you a rule about that, but I don't know if you remembered that rule.
I don't think you did. I think you forgot that one. Yeah, I did get a talking to you about that.
Yeah, definitely a 24-hour shift. We found that the bags really didn't work for when you're making 10 to 12 bottles. The end result is that my poor husband, trying to do as best he can, thawed way too much. And for me, it was probably a meltdown. I'll acknowledge that it was a meltdown. And I think all you moms can totally relate to that and understand where I'm coming from. But I think from a dad's perspective, maybe you didn't understand as that was that big of a deal.
No, it didn't. To me, it was, I saw her pump and I saw her store. I didn't think it was an enormous deal for an ounce or two to go away. But then realized it was.
It was more than an ounce or two.
I don't know if it was. It wouldn't have mattered if it was a half ounce. I would have learned that was a big deal.
Okay, that's true.
And in the end, she, instead of hollering, sort of berating, it ended up being a teachable moment, as we would say. So sort of just explained as why that was such a big deal to her, and then I got it eventually.
You're so positive with a teachable moment.
So positive.
He's being so positive because he's sitting right next to me.
12 years later, so yes, that was a small teachable moment back then. I'm sure at the time it wasn't that way.
But we moved on to something different because we called a lactation consultant, and for those of you that have heard my story before, you heard about the fact that the bags didn't really work for us, so we had to do something different, and that's when we started using the trays, and that definitely became a little bit easier.
We went to ice cube trays first.
We did do the ice cube tray. Well, that's where the milk trays came from. Yeah, and it was better, a lot better than the bags. But the problem is then my daughter only liked the narrow mouth bottles, so I had to cut the ice cubes in half, which became a complete disaster half the time. They don't cut as easy as you would think. So it was sort of a different direction. Yeah. I would cut one and then it would scoot across the island, or it would fall on the floor. And I rinsed out, put it back in the bottle. Oh my God! You just have to go.
It's fine. It's good for the immune system.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm
so
sorry.
I blow it off, rinse it off, and then put it in and warm it. And she liked it. It was great. It's fine. Worked out. Okay,
you just need to move on past that because I don't know if I can handle that. That statement that you just did.
It was much better when we went to the milk trays and I could just take them out and put them in the bottle and warm them.
That's probably easier.
Yeah, it was much easier.
Yeah.
No squirting off the table. She's okay though. She's fine. She's right in there. She's still wonderful.
The things that we find out.
Oh, look, we have another question. Look.
Oh, we do.
Yeah,
oh, look, we're
great.
moving on. How did you support Tobi breastfeeding? Did you divide up carrying rations?
I don't know. How did I support you breastfeeding?
Well, you did at night. You were really good about.
Yes. Yeah. That was the good part was at night.
Mhm.
Another perk to breastfeeding was I couldn't do it, so I got a lot more sleep. But we sort of divided up the process a little bit. So we wanted to make sure she had a clean diaper before she fed. So I would get up, I would change the diaper, and then make sure it's okay. And then I'd bring it into Tobi, and he would breastfeed, and then she would put her back to bed and go back to sleep. So it worked out well for that. As far as the support goes, I think it was pretty much from the beginning. It was supported as long as she could do it or wanted to do it. Then I was all about it. As long as the longest we could stay off of formula, the better. The longer, the better. So yeah, I supported her pretty much as I could. Wise.
I felt pretty supported. I know when I first came back from the hospital, those first few days was really hard for me on getting her to latch. And I would get kind of stressed out about it.
Yeah, the first couple of days were terrible from the hospital because we had so much support in the hospital. And I think when we got home, she felt completely alone, even though I was there, which is very comforting personally. But she felt very alone. So, it was tough for her like the first week or so. It was super tough because she wasn't latching the way she was in the hospital because she didn't have all the support. So then she had set her mind on, much like giving birth, she set her mind on going natural birth, which ended up not working because she went to C-section. So that was the first downturn in the birthing process that she couldn't control. And then the second one would have been because she wouldn't latch on. She thought that she was losing something else that she couldn't control. But we ended up working. We tried different holds and went off the lactation consultant's recommendations.
Yeah, because we made a phone call.
Yeah, so she held her different. She positioned her mouth different. And there was all kinds of other options that they helped us with. But it was over the phone instead of being right there like it was in the hospital. So that was tough.
I would have to admit, because we came from a very breast-friendly hospital, and someone was always right there. So when we got home, I mean, did you feel a little bit like
it was
nervous or lost?
Yeah, because it was much better in the hospital.
When someone's right there.
Well, and this was our first kid, so we didn't know what we were doing. We had listened to them, but they do this day in, day out, so they knew exactly what to do. It wasn't a big deal for them. For us, it was completely stressful.
But you never suggested that I use formula, did you? I don't think I ever remember you saying, go get the formula, or maybe we should just switch to formula. That's why I think he was really positive, was that he just...
No, I figured we could, everybody else do it. Pretty much as natural as it could be. More natural than formula is, so I figured she would get hungry enough to learn.
Guys' perspective is so different. You're very logical. You're very like, well, she'll just figure it out eventually. Yeah. I think I was, every minute was like...
Yeah. Every other animal learns real quick. That's the only thing I couldn't figure out. Dogs and cows come out doing it automatically, and infants take time and effort and teachable. They have to teach them to breastfeed, which is weird to me. I figured she would learn eventually.
That's a great attitude. If she gets hungry enough, she'll figure it out.
I know.
It wasn't great. It wasn't time. She wasn't exactly thrilled with my synopsis of what was going to happen.
No, I wasn't. I think it's really interesting hearing like a woman's perspective, a mom's from a dad's. I definitely think I don't want anyone to think that we're sweating out here. I don't want anyone to think that he downplayed any of it, because I really don't think he did. But I can see how he kind of looks at it, and maybe most men do, very kind of, it's a matter of fact, it'll happen, don't worry about it. And I think we really think about everything. We've talked about this before, where we think about our fails and how we're not doing stuff and we're not accomplishing and we're not living up to what we're supposed to. And I don't really think you guys think like that at all. You just kind of think, sure, it's going to be hard and you'll figure it out, and there you go.
Yeah. Well, and there's always other options. I mean, not that we ever brought
No,
those in.
no, those are not. They're not an option.
I mean, not that we ever brought, like she said, the formula never came into it because we never got along that far. But there's always something's going to work. So we'll figure something out, regardless.
Yeah.
The second one was much easier.
I like that. You're just so calm about it.
He really
Yeah,
was.
so
He really was, and I think that was good for me and bad for me at the same time. Like, his calmness, I think, really helped me in my, hyperventilating moment. But I think at the same time, his calmness irritated me a little bit because I felt like he didn't feel like it was as important. When I know you felt like it was important, you just you didn't react to it the same way I did. And I think that's important for us moms to understand that dads are they're different. They have different brains, I think, and they just think differently than we do. They react to things differently than we do. But it doesn't mean it's not as important to them. Right? Right.
Like the way you guys handled the colic situation, that you guys kind of both were able to manage Ashlyn when she was really upset, and you used different kind of techniques, but you worked together.
Yeah, the colic definitely was a big deal for Ashlyn. And I know some of the moms that have been on the Boob Tube in the past heard me, tell my colic story, and it was very emotional, and I cried, and you cried, and I think we were all crying. The colic situation for me, you took it a lot easier than I did. Like, I really stressed about it.
Yeah, that was something, and for some reason, it always seemed to work that way. The things that irritated me didn't not irritate, but the things that sort of got me frazzled didn't get her frazzled. And the colic was one thing that I don't know if it was just because, I don't know, if you thought that the milk was doing it or something in her intestines was doing it, or we couldn't figure out why it happened. I think is what bothered her. And to me, it was more, okay, if I get up and walk her around and pat her on the back, eventually it goes away, even if it takes an hour. She didn't like that at all, which didn't bother me that much. And then there was other, there's just things that got me, didn't get her, and things that got her didn't get me, as far as making us.
Like going out of the house.
Yeah.
Like he wouldn't leave the house.
Too much trouble.
For 6 months.
I don't know if it was 6 months.
I think it was 6 months.
It might have been quite a few
For 6 months, he did not leave the house.
But it was only every third day, so it was okay. I just relegated myself to the house. It was too much. It was too much work. I had to pack up too much to go anywhere. I would just do all my running around on the days that she was home, and then if the baby got hungry, she would feed it. And I couldn't do that.
That is true. I mean, I didn't really think about it from his perspective on if I went out of the house, I just packed the diaper bag with diapers, and that was it. My feeding was right there.
Strollers and diaper bags and coolers and ice cube trays, or not trays, but the ice packs, and milk sticks and bottles and ways to wash the bottles and all this.
You had to warm the milk. That was probably
you couldn't do it in the microwave, so
no.
I had to. And
how would you do it when you're on the road? So
I wouldn't. That's why I didn't go anywhere. So she drank cold milk, and then I could plug it in, no problem.
Yeah, and I think the only reason why my daughter eventually started drinking cold milk was because that's what Clay started giving her when he did finally leave the house. And I think I remember I was really shocked at that. I was like, "You're feeding her what?" And he's like, "She drinks cold milk just fine." And I'm like, "No, she doesn't." And he's like, "Yes, she does." And I think that was a shock to me.
That's the only way I was leaving. Easier to stay. There's too much stuff to pack up. What advice would you give to new dads and new mom?
Yep. So what advice did you get?
That's a tough one.
Would you tell them, what advice would you give to moms?
Moms, let's see. Moms, I would give, trust your husbands. Give them the list, but don't call them every 5 minutes to check on how they're doing on the list. Don't get angry if in your list you say take baby to. That's what I have with this one. Little stuff like that, the little nuances that I would change drove her crazy. Not saying that I did that on purpose, but Sometimes it made more sense the way I was doing it, and it didn't matter one way or another. But she lost her mind because she wanted everything just exactly right. At 3 o'clock, you'll feed 2 ounces.
Yeah.
Well, 3 o'clock came, she's still asleep. I'm going to wait till 3:30. No, you can't wait till 3:30.
I don't think I did that.
Oh, no. And then new dads, I would say listen to the moms, because the moms are more in tune with an infant. Dads probably are. She knew more. I had the schedule pretty good, but as far as when she was feeding, you guys really get to know the schedule. You really get to know the cries and how they react, and if this happens, she's going to do this, or the baby's going to do certain things. I would say the moms to write out, to give them a generic list, but make it generic. Don't, hey, you check her at this time and this time. You'll probably need to feed this much, and give us exacts on feeding. How you're going to feed 3 ounces, okay? Mm-hmm. And then when she wakes up, give her 3 ounces, and then we'll use the 3 ounces. Because moms are more in tune with how much to feed, it seems to me, than dads are.
So you would say it was good that I told you how much to feed, but all the micromanaging around that, like the feeding you're okay with, but all that around that was not really
correct. Because you didn't go back to work until she was 6 months?
4 months.
4 months. So in 4 months, but she was still getting diaper changes quite often. She was still getting fed quite often. So the list was good, just not the micromanaging of the list.
And the phone calls.
Yeah.
Okay.
To check on them, check that I did stuff on the list was.
I will have to admit, looking back, it's always easy to be outside looking in, or forward and looking back. That I probably did try to micromanage you way too much, and I do think that your moms do that. I think it is definitely something that, Helen, can you retype what they said? How did your husband help? And I can't read the rest of it for some reason. I do think that we as moms try to, maybe micromanage dads way too much, and that they really can handle it a lot more. And maybe you do feel like we're questioning your abilities by doing that. And we're not meaning to do that. We're not meaning to do that. But I think I saw a question about, but I couldn't read the whole question that came up for some reason. It only partially came up. But I do like your advice where you said, listen to the moms, definitely, because we do come from a place, especially with the cries, that we know, that's a painful cry, that's a gassy cry, that's a hungry cry, that's a I'm tired, go to sleep cry. That is something that we do. We're very attuned to as a breastfeeding mom.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That we don't. We're usually not there as many hours as you are with the baby.
You were there a lot, but I think it's just a different thing once you're feeding.
I can only take a few weeks off of work, so it's...
Yeah, so he was only there for the first couple weeks, then he went back to work.
24 hours, which got her also. Being there for 24 hours at a time when I went back to work was an issue with her. Not as much as it was for me, but still. That
was hard when he first went back to work. How did your husband help you on your breastfeeding journey?
That's for you. See, how did your husband?
That's for me.
I don't have one of those.
Okay. Well, he was, so I think, Clay being very calm and very, I think I would talk, and he would just be very quiet. He would nod and he would listen, and then I guess he would do what he wanted to do.
Well, also, I tried to also help a little with the research of items, because we didn't really know much. We had friends that breastfed religiously, and then we had friends that did nothing but formula from the moment of birth. So I think I also helped a little in researching pros and cons of breastfeeding and formula, and then tried to relay those to her as much as I could. And then once we made a decision, just tried to stick with the decision that we made as long as we could.
Yeah, he was definitely always you did do that. I forgot that you did that. He was very supportive in the fact that he really didn't, I think people trying to help, and I think we've had this discussion before, people trying to help by saying just give the baby formula actually doesn't help. It actually stresses breastfeeding moms out a lot more. And I think that you know, you never did that. You never just said, well, give the baby formula. You know, so I think that not ever saying that was a huge help, I feel like, to me, because I felt like you were doing this with me, that you were, you know, vested in this situation.
Yeah, and also sort of cutting off those suggestions as far as, because you get suggestions from every person that's ever had a child on what you should do, how you should do it, and everything else. And then to bounce the questions, she could get questions and bounce them off of me. And then between the two of us, decide if that was a good idea or not so much of a good idea, as far as, you know, the right bottle, or everything that goes along with transitioning to the bottle, plus between breastfeeding and formula.
Because I think that is a mistake that a lot of people make, is that, like we talk about, everybody's journey is different. Everybody's breastfeeding journey is different. Their experiences are different. Their bumps in the road are going to be different. And, you know, I could lots of advice, which I try to just encourage, not necessarily give advice to, because sometimes when you give that advice, your advice doesn't help them. It actually maybe could stress them out a little bit. We try to be supportive without being judgmental. And I think sometimes maybe we don't mean to be, but it can come across that way. And, you know, I think us, we're like a bonded front when it came to that. We knew everyone was going to have suggestions, but we knew that some of those suggestions weren't going to work for us. And we had to kind of figure out what worked best for us.
Parents were the worst.
Oh, yeah. Parents were the worst.
Parents were the worst.
Yeah. Because my parents never breastfed. So they were the ones that were notorious with saying things like,
just give her a bottle.
Just give her formula.
Just give her formula. Her parents and her had the biggest argument over which is better for them. They said, no, formula's better. It's made specifically for the baby. Formula's better. And her and I were, no, maybe in the 60s, 70s, but, oh, sorry, honey, 70s. I don't know. Sorry, not 60s.
I don't think formula ever really was better. I think that was the education that my mom got. That's what she thought. And I think she really was trying to be, and I don't want my mom to see this and think that we're talking negatively about her, because we're not. She was trying to be helpful, her and my dad. They were, you know, and I think sometimes trying to be helpful is what hurts, is what makes it harder for moms, is that trying to be helpful, but that helpfulness actually can be negative. And the just give the baby formula, it's better for the baby. Why are you feeding your baby every 2 hours? You know, that can't be right. You know, when I fed you formula, you wouldn't drink for 4 or 5 hours. So obviously there's something wrong. You're not doing it right. And I think you were always good. You would be right there with me sometimes and be like, no. And he would say some of the research, which I think was really good, because they hearing it from me, I think they felt like I had an agenda, whereas hearing it from him, they listened. I don't know why they would listen more to you than me, but I think that was the biggest thing. They felt like I had an agenda.
I have my theories on that.
Oh, yes. So you were I think that was the big thing, that you were supportive on that. And, you know, and we do have an interesting dynamic of me being in the fire service and you being in the fire service. Did you think at all that, you know, the guys were going to give me a hard time when I went back to work? We never actually discussed that. It's kind of funny.
No, I didn't really think about it.
No.
Because the departments are so different that I hadn't even, since we hadn't done it before and it hadn't really been done before, didn't even really consider it. I'd never heard of it before, but didn't think about what happened to go through it.
Yeah.
I didn't have any my station or really that many at my department to where that had been an issue before, that even had been a question to be raised. So I didn't even, until she started going back and doing it, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, he has a, you know, and for those of you that don't know that, a lot of people don't know this, women firefighters are about 3% in the United States. So it would make sense that, you know, he would not really have any women that he works with, you know, and then when I went back to work, you know, I think that made you, though, me breastfeeding and you being a supportive breastfeeding dad made you a better supportive breastfeeding fireman.
Maybe. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, probably so. We'll go with that. Yes, I agree.
Were there other questions that you wanted to ask? Because I know there was a couple ones that I know we haven't. Maybe there might be some more questions that you have. Did you have other questions for Clay?
Well, I guess I just want to know a little bit about
We got a little bit about
perspective on breastfeeding in the workplace.
Like his perspective on breastfeeding in the workplace?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, your
Both of you.
both of us. Okay.
Go
You
ahead.
do yours first.
Nope.
Oh, I'm going to go first.
Yeah.
Okay. So breastfeeding in the workplace for me, and there's a great article that I hope gets published here pretty soon that I wrote about breastfeeding under fire. I felt like it was definitely something where the guys at work didn't know really how to handle it and didn't really want to talk about it. And maybe it would go away if we didn't really talk about it. But once I did it and just showed them that it can be done, you know, I can be both a breastfeeding, pumping mom and be a firefighter paramedic and do both and not affect how I did the job. I think they were then fine with it. It actually opened up their eyes to the change of the fire service. And I'm hoping eventually that this becomes something, obviously it's not something they deal with very often, but there are eventually more women in the fire service, and there are going to be those that are moms and that are pumping. And I know in my 20 years, there have been 8 more moms that have come back from my fire department that have definitely had a different feel coming back to work than I did. I mean, I don't want to say it was ever a negative feel. It was just more of a kind of feel, just not know how to.
Do you really do that here?
Yeah, where are you doing that? How are you doing that? Do you have to do that? Yeah, you know, and that itself was stressful, even though I don't think they were meaning to be. And moms since then, because I guess I don't want to say led the charge because that just sounds so corny, but you know, in doing what I did, showed them that it can be done, and then the guys were very open to it and are very supportive now to our future. And now female firefighters are coming back to work. They're very supportive. They actually ask them, hey, are you going to be breastfeeding? And you're probably going to be pumping. So, or if you don't know that, you should call Tobi. She can tell you all about it. It's really good for the baby. You should do that.
Yeah, it's become a lot more commonplace, it seems like, just because, like now, my fire department has gone from a lot of older generation to a lot newer, younger generation. And it's a lot more accepted now because, I mean, I've had probably 4 or 5 girls that I know of at my department and some at my station that will be pumping at the station. So you walk through the dorm and you hear the pump in the background. And
It's so loud.
it is so loud. You gotta get a quiet one. But and then you know everything's stored in the freezer at the station. A lot of times for the 24 hours. As soon as they pump, they put it in the freezer, and then
it's a shared freezer that don't know that. Oh, yours are shared for
this one day.
For the one day for the crew. You know, of anywhere from 4 to 7, 8 people, depending on how big your station is.
It sort of becomes a joke every now and then because they'll forget them in the freezer. So then the crew will send her pictures of them, you know, with it like in their hand for a second, like they're going to crack it and use it for something other than breastfeeding. It's more of a joking front now than it was probably even 5 years ago or 10 years ago when it was almost taboo in the fire service. I think that's still from a mom's perspective. No, I mean
that is still taboo.
I'm
but
talking pumping. I'm talking
pumping,
about pumping aspect. It's still up for grabs if it's home. Yeah, funny for us.
Funny for them, not funny for us.
But everybody there knows not to actually use it for anything, or they would probably not make it the next day.
They would not. I think the moms would come back and
they would be ugly.
They would wake up from sleep and there would be less firemen there because mass murder at the fire station. But so I mean, I never thought about that. I might have affected 2 departments because my husband is a district chief now at his department, and I think when I had Ashlyn, you were already an acting lieutenant at the time. It was actually someone that was in more of a in-charge position. And I think, you know, he went into that perspective or into his job with that acceptance already. And I think from the top down, he was able to act like it was no big deal, and guys followed suit. And then for my department, it was, I showed them it was not a big deal and it was acceptable for them too. So really, it's two departments that changed from our breastfeeding journey.
Well, and you've had a bunch of others call.
I have. Other departments.
From Arizona call, ask you how you did it, and how it went about it, and how you got it accepted.
So I think there's kind of journey traveling how to be a how to accept your breastfeeding firefighter. I don't know if there's that many girls to really to have that be effective, but I think definitely my husband was very, very supportive. He was a part of the journey all the way, hand in hand. Even though obviously he didn't listen to all the little rules I gave him. Did I give you all those rules this time around?
Nah, I don't remember. I don't think so.
I was a lot more laid back the second time.
By the time Isabel came around, it was here. She's yours. I'm going back to work. See ya. Wow.
Well, we definitely, you know what made easier breastfeeding and going back to work was that we already figured out how to do it the first time and how to make the bottles and how to freeze the right way. And I will have to say that made the second time much easier. That was our biggest challenge, was really freezing and making the botttos. And then you knew how to do that already.
Right.
I still didn't leave the house.
But he didn't leave the house the second time.
Don't get mad at your husband.
Well, what I love your story because I think it illustrates how much we can impact other people just by kind of doing our own thing. I mean, you just really breastfed and you pumped and you showed that you could do that without, you know, interfering with your job. And you set that example for a lot of other people. So I think it's great.
Well, and I think, you know, sharing our journey, I think, is good. And I'm glad we had my husband come on because he does have a different perspective. The same perspective, but a different take on it. And I think as moms, we all have our own belief system and how things should go. And I guess, obviously, it can slightly go a little bit different and still be okay.
Right. And I love Amanda's comment, too, about her husband and how helpful he's been. I think that's really neat to read about other people and how their husbands are helping out and supporting. So thanks for sharing that, Amanda.
And I think for some reason, I'm not seeing everyone's comments. Normally I see them, but I don't know what's going on with our thing. I can't see anyone's comments. But I think a lot of husbands are really supportive of breastfeeding moms. And I think sometimes they're the hero in the background. You know, they're the hero that's actually there behind every great behind every great breastfeeding woman is an amazing man. What?
I wouldn't go with that.
That might not be a good bumper sticker, but I definitely do.
We'll work on that one.
We'll work on that one, yeah. But definitely, I think
it depends on the time of day. That changes hour by hour.
Well, it's okay to scratch his name out every once in a while. I think that's definitely but yeah, I think us being a team, I think is what helped me be successful. With I felt like we were a team. So when my parents had suggestions that were meant from the heart, but were very negative and stressful to me, my husband was right there. You know, we thought the same way, had the same say, instead of him kind of agreeing with them. And then I would have felt like I was being hit from all fronts, you know, or when your friend that didn't maybe breastfed suggest, you know, they don't mean to. Again, they're trying to be helpful, but really that helpful is making you feel like everyone's telling you can't when, you know, you go to your husband and say, I don't know if I can do this. And he goes, no, I think they don't mean, they're speaking from a different perspective. And that means I had that one person right there, you know, me always. Yeah.
The cheerleader.
My cheerleader.
Yeah.
Cheerleader.
Oh,
Quiet cheerleader that he is.
so cheerleader.
So cheerleader.
Aw. How nice.
Yeah.
Very sweet. All right. Do we have any other questions? If we do have other questions, we can answer those in the comments. So if you are watching this, great. And if you watch it later and you want to ask a question, just go ahead and leave it in the comments, and we'll come back and answer those all for you.
Yes, and I'll make sure when my husband answers that he puts clay behind his answer so that you know you're getting his answer.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'll be cool.
Clay do a little bit of boob tube talking.
I'll talk to you Friday.
Oh, you'll talk. I'll type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. If you have any questions for Clay, then you can address those in the comments as well. And I'm sure he'd be more than happy to answer whatever we're curious about.
He would be.
Sure.
Yeah.
And as you can he's very different of a personality than me, but it really works sometimes. And I think he definitely was the level, easygoing, relaxed to my, very passionate, very, bigger, passionate,
I like the way
bigger personality. He was the anchor. My belief.
Yeah. He's like the balance. He's
was
the
the
yin and
balance.
you're the yin and yang.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I hope that our little, I hope that our, sharing this story, I hope that moms and dads get to watch this, and I hope it's a benefit to both moms and dads. Again, I just like to share stories here at the Boob Tube, and it's all about, sharing and what you guys see. Our experience might give somebody or help somebody.
Okay. Well, thanks for watching. And we'll go ahead and answer your comments and questions. And look for episode 7 of Boob Tube coming up in September.
Yeah, in September. Yeah. September. It'll be, we don't know what our topic's going to be, but it'll be something. We always try to have great topics here in the Boob Tube. And we definitely are, maybe put some suggestions on some things you'd like us to talk about. That would be great. I'd love to do an audience on what you guys want to hear us talk about. I think we're definitely picking things that people want to hear, but I would love to hear, what you guys have to say about what you'd like us to talk about.
We love that.
That's one of the big things about the Boob Tube, right? We're moms,
We're moms.
all,
Right.
our kids running around, we're at work. Maybe I should do a Boob Tube from the day that I'm off so the engine can go back and forth, in and out,
Yeah.
Obviously not when I'm working, because I would have to go on that call. That would really end that session. But yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I think they would definitely not do it. But yes. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for watching. And
Thanks, Clay.
thanks, guys. And if you're
Thanks,
wondering
Tobi.
when we were talking about the trays, we probably should have mentioned that earlier. We're talking about Milky's milk trays, which is a way of freezing breast milk in single-ounce servings. That way, then any bottle can be thawed to order. So it really deals with more of the thawing aspect than the freezing aspect. And if you want to, we can go ahead and put a coupon code for the milk trays from our Facebook Live. I think Helen's going to type it in right now. But that's really what Clay was talking about earlier when we mentioned, the bags that he used that didn't really work out for us. Yes, please, Corinne, we're definitely going to put that on there for you. You can get a 15 or 20% off coupon if you use that Facebook Live coupon code. But that's what Clay's talking about, which is the Milky's milk trays, which we eventually created, I created with, I guess, help from my husband, because he was a part of my breastfeeding journey. So I'll have to give him a little bit of credit. So look for that. There it is, FB Live at Fairhaven Health. And, you know, go on there and maybe go ahead and get some milk trays. We have lots of other great products for you guys to see too. Helen's Milk Saver is there, and it's a great product for moms that really talks about not wasting any of your breast milk. Maybe that should be something we talk about next time. I think that would be a huge thing to talk about.
You don't need me for that?
No, you don't need him for that.
Out on that one.
All right, bye. Okay, we haven't ended quite yet.
Yeah.
We haven't ended. And here we go.